everyone, and welcome to the Searchlight Sessions. I am your host, Maggie McClure, and today I am very excited to have special guest with me, Brian Gililland from Oklahoma City. Hi, Brian.
Hi. Great
How
to
are
be
you?
here. So excited to talk to you.
Thank you. It's so good to have you. I love your background.
Thank you. You know, I like me some Bob's Burgers, and the room is a mess, so I figured why not use technology to my advantage.
There you go. Hey, you've got a nice microphone, though, that it symbolizes kind of what you do. So you've got something in there to show.
That's right. Yeah, and it's just floating
in outer space.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's a magical floating microphone.
That's awesome.
I love Zeus.
Well, for those who may not know about you, I'm going to just tell a little bit of your background. And of course, I want you to elaborate on that as well. I'm sure
Okay.
I'll leave some things out. So Brian provides on-set and post-production sound for film and TV and ads. He's working on productions like HBO's True Detective, films like Hellraiser, Judgement, and Children of the Corn, Runaway, all kinds of projects. From on-set work like operating the boom rig, as well as sound design and mixing. He's had over 10 years of experience in sound, and very grateful that you are here with us today, Brian.
Absolutely.
So tell us about your background and how you got into doing sound for film.
So the fact that I'm doing production audio for a living is total serendipityness. I went to film school, but I was like every other film student at the time that wanted to be a writer, director, producer, and all that. But I had a background in music, so I had been playing live with my band that my wife and I share the stage. And I had done a lot of time in recording studios. So whenever I started working for a little production company, they were basically like, "Hey, you've had some time in a recording studio, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I have." They're like, "Okay, cool. You're sound department now." I'm like, "What?" And so there was a lot of learning by doing. It was a very small, little kind of mom and pop production company. We were doing commercials for little local businesses and stuff. And so I basically had to learn on the job. And from there, from doing post-production audio and like real basic location sound stuff over time, I think I did that for about 2 or 3 years. And then I got sucked into the world of feature films, which is kind of funny because feature films is what I wanted to do in the first place. Just, I never thought I would end up doing it from the perspective of sound. And then it turns out that I absolutely love working production audio. I love getting to run the department or be a part of the department that it feels like people don't often think about until you're on set. And I feel just very, very lucky because it's just such a really fun experience to get to be a part of.
That's awesome. Do you remember what your first feature film was that you worked on?
My first feature film ever, I was just a production assistant, but my first feature film in the world of sound was the Post-Human Project with Kyle Roberts directing. And I had come off of documentaries. So I had come off of like the stuff that we were doing at the studio was all, for the most part, documentary style, where we're doing sit down interviews and all that kind of stuff. And it's a very, very different ballgame going from documentaries where you're, for the most part, in a very controlled environment, to doing location audio where you have to hide mics and, you're using boom techniques that you normally don't use in documentary style and all that. And it was right back to learning by doing. And it was a really, really fun experience. It's a fun movie too.
That's awesome. Yes, I've seen it, and Kyle's awesome. That's so cool. So for those who are watching, what exactly does a boom operator do?
So a boom operator, there's a lot that he does beyond just working the boom. For the most part, when you think boom operator, it's the guy holding the stick and it's got the microphone on the end of it, and you're getting the microphone as close to the people that are speaking lines as you can without getting inside the shot. So that's task number one. But you also, the part that boom operating, the part that people don't think about with boom operating is that you're the only other person aside from the actors that has to have the dialogue memorized, because you have to know who to be on before they start talking. So you're doing a lot of studying the dialogue, you're studying your sides, and then you're also communicating with the camera team of what the shot's going to look like, where the shot is going to be. You're doing a lot of rehearsing with the camera team as they're figuring out their blocking and all that kind of stuff. Your eyes are kind of all over the place between camera department and the actors. Another really fun part about boom operating is that we're the ones who are responsible for wiring up actors, unless you have like a sound utility, which is kind of like an assistant to the sound department. And a lot of lower budget stuff, which I come from the world of indie film, so we don't normally have the budget that we get to have a full-blown 3-person team or 3 or 4-person team. So I get to do all the wiring of the actors too. And that is super fun. Boom operating is fun because it's a puzzle. When you're wiring actors, it is so much fun because every bit of wardrobe is different. Every actor is different. You have to really have people skills, because you can't just walk up to a perfect stranger and be like, hey, let me manhandle you and put this on you. You're getting under their clothes. So you're working with wardrobe department a lot. You're working with the hair and makeup team sometimes. It's just a really symbiotic position, and it's really, really fun. It can be really, really scary too, though, when you're working with actors that may or may not want to have anybody near them.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool. I never thought about a boom operator having to memorize the lines.
Mm-hmm.
That is really...
And I have a horrible memory, so I end up writing a lot of notes on my arm so that I can have my arm up and I can kind of look at my arm of like, okay, that line's coming up, and I'll move it over. And
wow.
So there's a lot of little fun hacks.
That's so cool. Well, can you explain to our viewers also, what does it mean to be a sound mixer on a film or TV show?
So a sound mixer is the department head of the sound department. So you're responsible ultimately for the final product of the sound. The sound mixer is communicating a lot more with the first assistant director. We are responsible for time code for jamming the sound with the picture. That is our responsibility. And then you're the boss. So, you're looking several steps ahead of the game and looking forward to what's the scenes that are coming up and all that jazz. You're commanding your boom operator to do that or don't do that or do that different. Mm-hmm. And you're sending your sound utility assistant to go get you coffee. But ultimately the sound mixer is the department head, and you are responsible for your data. You're responsible for how the sound ends up. You're responsible for the mix. There's such a thing as a sound recordist, and that's where everything is just feeding into the mixer, and you don't really get the chance to use your faders and mix channels and whatnot. A sound mixer, on the other hand, is really paying attention to each channel and mixing a pre-mix so that the editor, whenever it goes into post-production, the editor has he has the closest thing to movie sound that he can before it goes into post audio. So it helps post-production be able to actually edit and it not sound like complete raw audio.
Right. Very cool. Well, are there other roles that are really key that we should talk about in the sound department in general?
Within the sound department, there's the sound utility, and that is the sound assistant that I like to razz a lot. The sound utility is a very often overlooked position, but it's really, really important. Utilities are responsible for real basic maintenance. When there is a sound utility, they're helping out with wiring actors. They're helping out with wrangling cables so that the boom operator, if he's hardlined into the mixer, he's not getting tripped up and causing all sorts of accidents and stuff. And then they're responsible for basically just helping everybody be able to do their job even better. So when you have a good sound utility, which is sometimes an entry-level position, sometimes it's not, depending on the level of a movie that you're working on. Mm-hmm. Super, super important, and it's really often overlooked.
Okay. Very cool. You mentioned dialogue cleanup as something that you do. What does that process look like?
So dialogue cleanup, so that's fast forward from production. So we leave the boom operator and the sound mixer behind, and now we're sitting in the editing suite. And whenever you're doing post audio, the first thing that you're going to be doing is dialogue cleanup. So, a lot of times the circumstances on the set make it to where the sound mixer is maybe not necessarily able to get the as clean dialogue as you possibly can. There's a plane flying overhead, or there's some background sound, or a bird's chirping, or a bang happening over something. So you've got to clean all that up. And technology, the way it is now, has made it in such a way that you can pull sounds out. You can pull scuffle out of t-shirts whenever a lav is buried underneath shirts. You're changing the EQ so it's less muffled like this, and you can brighten it up and make it a little more on the high end. And then you're doing noise reduction. You're just trying to make it sound as clean as possible without all the distracting bogeys, as we say.
Mm-hmm. Wow, very cool. And Foley work, do you guys do that? Can you explain what that is?
Yes.
That's like really a lot of fun, but I'm sure it's also challenging in itself.
Foley work is super, super interesting. And it is an art, and you get to use the creative side of your brain in a way that you normally don't. A lot of times people kind of look at the sound department as if we're, well, not a lot of times. Sometimes they look at us like we're the artists. We're sound and microphones. We're actually technicians more than anything. You don't really get into the artistic side of things until you get into the world of Foley. And Foley, that's where you're really using your creativity of, like, especially if you're world building, if you're in a science fiction scenario, like we'll say Star Wars or something like that, you're creating sounds. And so you're kind of thinking outside of the box of, like, well, I want something to sound like this. What sounds close to that? Because this doesn't exist. And so, there's little trade secrets of how to create certain sounds. I did post audio for this dinosaur themed action movie. It was a really fun project because I was creating all these dinosaur sounds. And with doing Foley work, sometimes you're going out. Sometimes you're actually using sounds within your own library. So you have backup sounds that you just download, and you mix things together and create new sounds. Or you take your microphone and your sound bag and you go out and you're capturing all those sounds, and then you're bringing it in, and then you're mixing everything together. And it's just really fun. Like I was creating sound effects for velociraptors. And so I got to use all these really cool bird sounds and tortoise sounds, different reptiles and stuff, and like going through my libraries. And then there were some things, footstep sounds, that I wanted to have a little more girth behind them and have a little scratch behind them. So I'm recording scratches and whatnot, and getting, a bag full of dirt. And it's just really fun. It's, it's all that stuff that you see in those behind the scene videos of people, watching a screen and shing, and just doing stuff like that.
Right. That's awesome. I've done a tiny bit of that type of stuff, like in our music videos and whatnot, and it's been a lot of fun. So I've always thought that would be a really fun thing to get into.
It's super cool. One tip I will say for the ones that are wanting to get into Foley work and post audio and stuff is never underestimate the power of reverb, essentially reverb, because reverb when you think of reverb, first thing off the top of your head, you think of an echo, basically. And an echo is different than reverb. Reverb is the sound of the room. And so each room sounds very, very different. So I'm in a small room right now. It's a square room. And it would sound different than if I was in a large cathedral. Mm-hmm. And so one of the great things about when you're doing post audio work and you're doing the mixing of all of that Foley where you've captured all your sounds, now you've got to really make it sound like a movie. Yeah. And so you use your verb to put those sounds in an environment. So never underestimate the power of reverb. There's different tips and tricks that you do that kind of goes down the rabbit hole. But if you want something to sound immersive, always think of the environment that sound would be coming from, and that is your reverb.
That is a very good tip. Very cool. What's the craziest or most fun sound you've ever had to create in Foley?
Oh man, the dinosaur ones are a big one.
Yeah.
Golly, weapon sounds are really fun, because weapon sounds are like, there's just something about the metallics and the mechanisms and stuff. Servos, the little zing servo stuff like that. Yeah. I'm trying to think of a crazy thing that I had to create. Laser sounds are really fun.
Oh, that's cool.
Laser sounds are cool because like if you want to create your own laser sound, you find yourself a nice telephone pole or something like that has a metal cable running down, and you just pew, and you can hit it, and it creates a really, I mean, like very Star Warsy laser sound. What's awesome. Really fun though, I will say, it's you'd be surprised how often you're just not getting the right what you have in your mind. And there has been a time or two where I have used my own myself to create the right sound. Something as simple as like or something like that. Just, just be creative and have fun. That's ultimately what this is all about, is just have fun.
Yeah. All great advice. So you mentioned earlier that you went to film school. Do you feel like people really need to go to some kind of training in order to get work in sound?
Ooh, that's tricky. That is tricky. I could get in trouble for for saying no. But I think the truth, if I'm being honest, film school is very, very handy for a networking tool. You meet future coworkers, and you meet future, people that will eventually lead to your employment. Because the thing about working in film specifically is that it's almost 95% word of mouth based, getting your jobs. So having people skills, being a kind person, being a humble person, and being a hardworking person really, really goes a long way. And that's one of the great things about film school, is that you can kind of prove your worth, earn your stripes in a way. But at the same time, you can still make a living doing this without having to go to film school, because the truth is that in our industry, the technology is constantly advancing. And what often happens, again, this is if I'm being intellectually honest here.
Yeah.
What often happens is that you'll learn a full set of techniques and stuff, and you'll learn how to operate all this technology that by the time you get out in the field, it's obsolete. Yeah. And that's the brutal, honest truth.
Right.
So what you need to take away from film school is your set etiquette, is your work ethic. Work ethic goes so far, it's unbelievable. Learning how to work with people, how to collaborate with people skills goes so far. It's amazing how few egos are actually on set. Like when you're talking about below the line jobs, you can't really have an ego on set, because again, it's word of mouth. It's a word of mouth based industry. So if you're a jerk, you're probably not going to get hired, or you better be really, really good.
Wow. Yeah. I could definitely say, people skills is huge. A lot of people, I'm sure, would want to go to film school, but maybe if they don't have the means to do that, I mean, what are some practical ways that people could get involved with the Oklahoma film industry in particular?
Well, the first thing that you can do is register on the Oklahoma Film Music Office registry. You've just got to get out and network, and not network in the sense of like, here's my business card, call me. Like you're not a lawyer.
Right.
Get involved with the 48-hour film project, get involved with Dead Sitter Film Festival, go to film festivals, get out there, get on, different Facebook groups, or there TikTok groups. I don't know. I am of the generation that my social media begins and ends with Facebook and Instagram. That's pretty much it. But use the means that you have to network, meet people, befriend people. I think that's more important than the word networking. Befriend people.
Yeah, I like that.
Because again, word of mouth based industry. If you can make a good impression, if I have a young student reach out to me and say, "Hey, I'm looking for some on-set experience," I'm gonna jump on that like white on rice. Like, I want to help you get work because we need more workers. We need fresh blood. People keep moving away. And yeah, so reach out to somebody. Find somebody that you see that is working consistently and reach out to them and start getting those credits together. And again, be humble, be willing to start at the bottom and work your way up, because you're not going to start at the top right off the gate.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, from my experience with music and just in life in general, I mean, yes, going to school can be so helpful. I went to OCU and studied music business. But when it comes to actually doing the things that we end up actually doing, it all comes down to just being put into it and figuring it out and learning from other people. And I think that's great that if someone was interested in doing what you are doing and they reached out to you and said, "Hey, I'd love some experience," you openly welcome that. And that's great.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, I mean, like, every department head that I know that I work with is exactly the same way. We love training new people. We love meeting new people. I love making new friends, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's what it's all about, being a good person and wanting to be around your friends and do what you love. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. That's awesome.
Now, I will say a slight reality note is that when you're starting out, you will have to work for free starting out, because you have no experience. So you have no monetary worth just yet. Mm-hmm. So you have to work for free for a little bit. And you have to volunteer, and it's just getting out there and proving your worth. Yeah. And then eventually you do start getting those day rates, and you do start getting those kit rentals. For sound department, we're the only department aside from like makeup that really has to own our own gear. Mm-hmm. So if you are wanting to get into sound, start saving your money, because you are going to have to, invest in a real kit. So and that's probably not going to be less than $10,000. So get that. Don't use a credit card. Save.
That's awesome. Well, that's one thing I was going to ask about, because, I saw that was on your website, is that you could provide a kit, and I wanted to explore what that actually means. What all do you need to be able to work on a show or movie and have included in your kit?
So if you're working on like a student project or something like that, I think you could get away with a wireless lav. Technically, you could get away with just a boom rig and a real basic mixer recorder. You could get away with it, but you gotta be aggressive with your boom, and you gotta get as close into the people that are talking as you can without getting in the shot. On a professional level set, my kit includes, I have a full cart. So I have my multi-track recorder, which records up to 12 channels. So that's 12 microphones that I could put into that. I have several wireless lavs that live on the actors. Along with the lavs, you also have to have your, rigging gear. So you have your straps and your tapes and your, all this fun stuff and clips and whatnot, wind protection and all that kind of stuff. You have your boom rig, which is boom pole, shock mount, microphone, XLR cable, and if you have a boom operator, then you have a preamp that it goes into, which runs either into a wireless unit that sends a wireless signal to my mixer, or is hardwired into me, which means he has a tail that he then needs a cable wrangler and all that. We are also responsible for the director, the script supervisor, and potentially the producer to be able to hear. So we have what are called comtechs, which I have one somewhere around here. Yeah. We have these comtechs, which are just these little monitors. They look like little wireless lav systems.
Okay.
Show. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is whenever you see the pictures of the director wearing headphones. Well, it's plugged into one of these.
Okay.
And that way, and that just, what they're hearing is a mix, is everything that I'm mixing together, and it's being fed out to this little radio transmitter that goes to the director and all that.
Very
So
cool.
you also need one of these. If you do not have one of these, it'll be a thing. And then we also are responsible for like providing the slate, and that can be just a dumb slate that's just a regular clapboard and just like dry erase marker.
Mm-hmm.
Or we have a smart slate. We call it a smart slate, where it's the slate that has the rolling numbers, the little digital time code on there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything.
That's
Maybe
cool.
boom, you got your microphones, you got your mixer. And you can get far in the weeds. There's so much gear.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Wow.
Every single time I think I've got enough, I don't. There's more toys.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. But very good to know. I'm sure a lot of people are curious about that. So thank you for explaining. What are some of the things that you've run into on set, maybe that you've seen happen multiple times, challenges that have come up, maybe consistently that you've had to figure out how to fix?
There are occasions where, a communication lapse, or they move something around in the call sheet where I don't have the amount of wireless lavs that we need to be able to cover all the actors. So that means that we have a couple actors that are wired, and then we have a couple actors that are not wired. And that's a problem where you have to be creative and learn how to adapt and learn how to improvise. Mm-hmm. And also, that's where knowing your equipment and knowing the limits of your equipment really, really goes a long ways. So in a scenario like that, now you're being strategic on who you put a microphone on, because they're going to be standing next to this other person, so you can pick up that other person on this lav and that kind of thing. And you're playing with the blocking, or you're using plant mics where you take a wireless mic and you leave it on an object of some kind. You have it hiding, and the person, they hit their mark and it's within the right range and that kind of thing. So that's a common issue. I feel like the biggest issue, not struggle, but the biggest challenge would probably be personality. Because of the fact that sound department, we're often looked at kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the set, because like we hear things that no one else hears. So you have to learn how to communicate of, okay, well, we have to go again because we didn't get the sound clean. And you have to learn how to be diplomatic. That is I can't stress the importance of diplomacy and communication skills. Because sometimes you have to put your foot down as the department head. Tell the first AD, look, we have to go again. If we don't go again, then you're gonna have to do it in post. So we need to have this real conversation right now. Does the budget of this movie allow this to be covered in post? Because it's extremely expensive. So, okay, it's not covered in post. We've got to go again. And that's probably the hardest thing. I don't like people being mad at me. Sure. So it's hard for me to be like, now listen here. Now look, I'll tell you a thing or two. There's often times where you have to be diplomatic with the camera team. You do butt heads with other departments. And you've just got to learn how to get your point across, get what you need to do your job as well as you possibly can, and everybody still be friends at the end of the day, because you're still going to be sharing 12-hour days with these people. I have had moments in my life where that, you know, you'll have a personality that you just cannot figure out how to make this work. And it sucks. It just sucks because you're stuck with these people. And yeah, also learning how to let things roll off your back. That's something that I feel like I'm still learning. It takes a lot to really get under my skin, but once you get under my skin, it's really hard to get out from underneath it. Right. So something I'm still learning. I'm learning grace.
Yeah. Well, on set, it can be such a high pressure situation for everyone. Yeah. So, you know, everyone is being told what to do by someone else to some degree, and, you know, has to report to someone, and we're all working within guidelines and parameters and rules, and it can be a high pressure situation. So I can imagine those moments on set are not fun to have to tell everyone we need to do it again.
You've got to learn how to be assertive but not combative.
Right.
And then on top of that, you know, when you're working with actors is another personality loop-de-loop that you're always constantly having to work with. There's a lot. I would say the majority of actors are very, very kind. They're very patient. But you do have those people that you work with that are extremely combative. They are extremely territorial and whatnot. And you've got to learn how to work with that, because the most important thing is for the movie to get the best product. But if you come in there and you throw off this actor's mojo and they're in a moment or something like that, and you don't want to pull them out of that. So you've got to learn how to work with that. I think I feel like every person that is wanting to get into the world of film should at least take one acting class, just to put yourself in those shoes, just to kind of understand that world, because it's people think it's all sunshine and rainbows, and it's very, very difficult. You have a lot of people. You have no control. As an actor, you have no control over hardly anything except for your performance.
True.
Everybody's trying to do their job to the best of their abilities. And here you are trying to do your job to the best of your abilities, but you've got a makeup person poking you with a brush, and you've got a sound person who's messing with your clothes, and you've got, you know, camera guys who are telling you to stand on your mark and turn your face just right. It's really hard. Yeah. So, you know, if you're a sound guy and you have to make an adjustment on an actor, always keep that in mind. There's been a lot of times where, like, I have, you know, depending on the movie, I'll often call the actor by their character's name just to kind of help them along, just to keep them in it and stuff. It's just that those are the kind of things that you have to kind of think about.
Wow, that's really cool. And I know I haven't thought about that. And being a musician and also an actor, I could see the value in people, you know, on all sides having taken an acting class. I think that's really smart to point out. And
also take an improv class if you feel like it. Because I'll tell you what, if you want to learn how to be able to collaborate with people and learn how to communicate and have people skills, I think an improv class, it's kind of funny how much of a performative nature it feels like a lot of this is. Yeah. But I think that goes a long ways too.
Sure. Well,
people think that improv is about like being funny and stuff, and it's not. It's about communication and collaboration.
Right. And you have to go with the flow a lot on set. Mm-hmm. And so it's good to learn how to do that.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I mean, like it's such, working on a set is such a constantly adaptive thing, that learning how to adapt and learning how to be flexible and roll with the punches is priceless.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Well, you know, you mentioned earlier that you have a musical background and that you kind of just got thrown into this because of that. I mean, what would you suggest to maybe some musicians during this time of COVID, where maybe playing live shows isn't really an option right now, but there's a lot of films going on, and maybe they have an interest in getting involved, and they have some experience in live sound and performing and whatnot. What would you say to those people?
I would say if you're a musician, right now is a really wonderful time to study up on your technology, study up on mics and how mics work and how these systems work, and reach out to filmmakers and offer to score or offer to do a sound edit or something. I think it's from a musician standpoint, getting into the editing suite is priceless, just period. Because you're supposed to be a recording artist, so you should know how to record and how that kind of stuff works. So if you're a musician that's interested in getting into film, get behind a computer, get into that editing suite and learn how this stuff works.
Yeah, that's awesome advice. And would you also say, reach out to different people like yourself about getting involved and maybe, just shadowing you or whatever?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And yeah, for musicians, there's so many post audio houses that are popping up left and right. We're in this, the music industry is in this weird place right now where it's live performance, there's no live performances happening. So hopefully there's a lot of recording happening, but a lot of those recording studios are also starting to kind of work their way into production audio stuff for films. And so I'm starting to see a lot more of a crossover, which is really, really cool, I think.
Yeah, that is really cool. Well, what are some of the post audio houses that maybe people should check out?
Definitely check out Castle Row Studios. They're based in Del City. Check out Audio Planet. They're a post audio group up in Tulsa. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. Black. What is the name of the? Oh, I don't think you were doing you didn't do the Chevy Showcase thing with us, did you? I'm trying to think. A Music Group Studios.
Okay. In
Edmond. Yep, up in Edmond. Okay. And then there's another recording studio down in Norman that their name escapes me. It's like
Blackwatch.
Blackwatch. That's the one.
Cool.
Yeah. But Castle Row and Audio Planet are huge.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, people can check those out. Thank you for mentioning those.
Yeah. And as soon as their checks are, they go through, then I can sleep safe. I'm good. They pay me handsomely to talk about them.
That's awesome. So let's talk about your podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I host the Oki Show podcast, which is, we're essentially an educational podcast. Boom. Look at that.
Wow.
We're essentially an educational podcast, but we come at it from kind of an entertainment standpoint. We talk about the ins and outs of working in the film and music industry, from specific topics. So we have an episode that we focus on what an intimacy coordinator is. That's the first example that comes to mind. We have another episode that talks about, like, if you want to start a family and raise a family while you're working in this crazy industry. We have an episode that talks about if you want to be a voice actor, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's really fun. It's really loose. I co-host it with an improv actress named Kelly Lawson and a local comedy writer named Nicholas Zabo. And we have a lot of fun. We also play improv at the end of each episode. So if you listen to the end, it's either really funny or just bad.
Oh, well, I've certainly enjoyed listening to multiple episodes and being a part of one as well. How can people check it out? What would you suggest is the best way?
If you want to check us out, you can go to okishowshow.com. Also, check us out on YouTube. Each of our episodes, you can watch the video side of them at youtube.com/okishowshow. Definitely check us out on Facebook and Instagram. I would say we have a Twitter, but I'm not on. I'm like personally boycotting Twitter because it's dumb. But we are there.
Okay.
We exist on Twitter. But yeah, on the socials and our website, And if you would like to support us, go to patreon.com/Yoki Show and become a patron today.
You know, that's funny because I was just talking to my friend Ernie Halter earlier. He's a musician and very successful on Patreon, and we were talking all about Patreon. So very cool to hear that you guys have that as well.
Yeah, and it's really, really fun because not only we're about to start our 5th season here coming up. So we've been doing this. We've actually been doing the podcast for about 6 years now. And it started off as this fun, silly idea of like, I want to kind of meet some other people or talk about my really cool friends that work in the industry. And now it's become this really, really fun little machine of we're getting outside of Oklahoma. So now we're starting to talk to people in Texas. We have the makeup artist, the makeup department head from Fear the Walking Dead that's about to be on the show. Golly, we've had Ryan Connolly from Film Right on, and we've got some really, really cool people on there. And we're also shooting original sketches now. So we have like a writer's room with all these comedians that come in and we write scripts and then we do table reads and all. It's just really fun.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, I did see on your IMDb that you worked on Tiger King.
Yes. Of all the things that I've worked on over the course of the last decade, that was the one that got away from me. It wasn't True Detective. It wasn't Hellraiser. It was the one about the weird tiger guy.
What was that experience like?
So when I started working on that was a long form documentary. When you're working on a documentary series like that, often you're shooting for years. So I've worked on a lot of true crime stuff. It's honestly become my favorite type of project to work on is true crime, because you're actually, in a weird way, you kind of feel like you're actually helping people. Mm-hmm. With Tiger King, I started working on that probably I ended up working on it for 3 years. And whenever I started working on it, Joe was not in jail. Joe was not under investigation. We just thought he was a silly guy that owned tigers.
Okay.
But the producers had come in from New York and they had hired me, and I knew Joe, not personally, but I knew about Joe. And they're like, oh, he's look at this kooky guy. He's going to run for governor. And then, a couple months go by and they're like, oh, he's trying to murder someone.
Oh, no.
So then we realized that Joe was under federal investigation, but he did not know. We knew, but he did not know. So I'm putting a mic on a guy and working directly with a guy that I know full well that this dude's going to jail. But he didn't know.
Oh my gosh.
So that was a new experience of like, I know something you don't know.
I'd say
you're going to jail.
Wow, that's crazy.
And then whenever it blew up, it was, I'll tell you, man, you when you do this for a living, literally every producer tells you this is going to be the biggest thing ever. Everybody says that. And it's going to be on Netflix. It's going to be huge. It's going to be a phenomenon. You're like, all right.
Right.
I'll believe it when I see it. Exactly. I won't.
Exactly.
But then when it does happen, it's kind of crazy.
Wow.
When something that you worked on and were intimately affected by becomes a part of the worldwide zeitgeist, it's a really interesting thing to observe, because it becomes something. It becomes its own thing. Mm-hmm. Like, I was a part of this thing over here, and then it goes on into this. It's no longer a part of you, and it's a really interesting thing to watch that happen. Yeah. Because for me, I was working on it for so long that, like, I knew Rinky and I knew Joe and I knew all these characters, and I knew them pretty well. Like, me and Rinky, the guy with no legs, like, we would have really fun conversations, and then I'd be working with Jeff Lowe, and God, I would just hate his guts, but I, would still have conversations with him and just observe how awful of a human being he was. Wow. And it was interesting to see some of the takeaways from the audience of like certain people that would be sympathized for, that like, since I was there, boots on the ground, like I knew full well this person does not deserve sympathy whatsoever. Mm. So that was interesting. That was a new one for me, of like, why would you defend this person? I know this person. I know they're not good people. So, wow. But that's just one of those things that you kind of, in this world, when you work on things that the world sees, which that's hopefully the point, that you do have to accept that the audience is going to make their own conclusions, and you have no control over that. Right. Wow. Well, what an experience. It was interesting. I tried it. There were so many guns that popped out, and I'm no stranger to guns, but oh my goodness. There were definitely scenarios where I was like, I don't feel safe. Oh no. Wow. Well, I'm sure, everyone can check out your IMDb as well and see all of the different projects you've worked on and all the different types of projects. And you've even had different roles, like you've acted in some, you've directed some, right? You've done some music. Yeah. Yep. So that's really, really cool. Is there any last thoughts you have, closing tips or advice for our viewers today before we sign off? I think just the best advice that I can give to anybody that's interested in being a part of filmmaking for a living, is be kind, be humble, and be hardworking. Ultimately, at the end of the day, those three things are going to get you so far in your career and in your life. You'll be a happier person. You'll be a more joyful person when you care about those around you and you put your absolute best into what you're doing. So come at things with passion, come at things with love and grace, and just have fun. I love that. Thank you so much for being here today with us, Brian. Really appreciate you being a part of the Searchlight Sessions. This video series, remember guys, is designed to help up-and-comers in the entertainment business like yourselves to expand ways that they can be successful. Stay tuned for some takeaways from this session to assist with your success. Thank you so much, Brian. We really appreciate you. Absolutely. It was such a joy. Yes, it was.